Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. We're going to be talking to Jon with Home Standard. He is an inspector here in Omaha, Nebraska. The big thing that we're going to be talking about today is using home inspections for buyers. And that's one of the last thing a lot of buyers think about, and they think they have to always waive that in their contract. And that's not always the case. A lot of times, especially for me, I've been able to get a few of my buyers to get inspections on the properties. And it's very important to have a base knowledge or get an inspector in there so that you don't run into complications later on: HVAC, AC, roof, water damage, mold, termite, anything like that. So we're going to dive into a lot of things that Jon does to make sure that your property is ready for you to move in there and that you're making a financially responsible decision to stay in the contract. The first thing that we'll hit on is what exactly is a home inspection?
Sure, yeah. So a home inspection is it's basically an objective look at a house from a professional home inspector. Does this, looks at houses. You can kind of think of it as if you take your car to a mechanic after you buy it and you say, or before you buy it, you say, hey, let's look under the hood, tell me what you see under there. You know, most people aren't versed in looking under an engine and be able to tell you what's going on. So you kind of think of a home inspector as just trained in knowing what to look for in a house, knowing how to put together a report for you as a buyer so that you can kind of prioritize, you know, this is an issue that you want to be aware of before you move in. You know, just a heads up on what you're buying. It's kind of a safety deal for you to make sure you're not getting into something you're not ready to. So it's just information. It's a service. We're trying to provide a service to the client, give them more information on what they're thinking about purchasing.
And that really does go into what the current market is forcing a lot of buyers to do, and a lot of complications that are coming up with that. With the home inspection, as a real estate agent, I'm always going to encourage you to do a home inspection for the house, because it is a huge part, just like you said. If you are having car problems and you don't have a chip reader available to you, or you do, and it gives you a random code, there's a dozen different things that could be going wrong with your car, even from the code that it gives you. This is going to give you the opportunity to look at a little bit of that cost analysis moving into the house. Part of inspections is that there's a lot of additions that we add on to that you can add on to inspections. One of the big ones in Nebraska is radon. Why is radon such a big deal over here?
Yeah, so radon testing, you can add that on to a home inspection, and we'll come out and be able to test that house for radon. It's a 48-hour test typically, so we can either set the monitor in the house a couple days before we do the inspection, or we set it when we do the inspection and pick it up a couple of days later if the window allows for that. But radon is basically it's a decay product of uranium. So thousands, millions of years ago, when there was icebergs grinding across the continent, as far as I understand it, somebody told me this, they would let go, they would drop uranium, and just wherever that is, underneath, if it's underneath your house and there's a large amount of it, then that uranium, it just continuously decays. And one of the decay products is radon gas, which is odorless. You can't see it, but it is the second leading cause of lung cancer. And Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas is one of the kind of the hot spots where there's large amounts of radon. All the tests that we do, about half of them come to the level where the EPA recommends that house be mitigated for the radon. The EPA set the action level at 4.0 picocuries, which is a measure for radon. If we get something at 4 or above, then they recommend the house be mitigated, which people always ask the price on that or what that entails. basically it's typically, you know, between $800 and $1,200 is kind of what I tell people. Our company doesn't mitigate for radon, but there's plenty in town that do. And typically it's just, if there's a sump pit in the house, they'll stick a pipe into that and then run it outside and attach a fan to it that will just continuously run, and it creates a low pressure area there. It basically sucks the air out from under the house before it can come into the house and you breathe it. So yeah, if that answers your question about radon.
Yeah. A lot of people don't understand exactly what radon is, and it's a pretty important test here. And like you said, it's not super expensive to mitigate radon here in Nebraska. We don't have very rocky soil compared to other places in the country. So $800 to $1,200 is generally standard. Every house is sitting on something different, so can't promise that, but that is going to be something that you look into. That's why it's become standard for new construction to have the radon mitigation system already put into place before you move in, as kind of like putting in fire alarms, carbon monoxide detectors and stuff. The radon mitigation is already added into the construction costs because it's now mandatory for them to do that. With that being said, besides radon, what are some of the big red flags, some of the key items that you're analyzing that are going to help save the buyers the most money by having you come in?
So sure. So like one of the first things I think of is the roofs on a house. You know, as a buyer, typically you're not bringing your ladder with you at the showing, getting on the roof and looking at it, and you want to make sure that the roof, you want to know how old it is, how much life is left, and also make sure there's not going to be like some storm damage up there that could create a problem when you're going to get home insurance on the house. There are times where someone they'll buy a house, they'll tell their insurance, I think the house is like, I think the roof is like 10 years old or something. The insurance will say, okay, we'll insure your house, and then you know, a month later, 2 months later, they'll come out and actually evaluate the roof, and they'll say, well, looks like there's hail damage on here. You're gonna have to replace this roof before we're able to insure the house. So then you sit there, you're stuck with, you know, depending on the size of the house, you know, $10, $15, $20,000 out of pocket that you have to fix that roof. So just being heads up on that. You know, plumbing issues. Sometimes, you know, we kind of talked about how radon is another inspection. If I see reasons to have maybe the sewer line scoped, I'll suggest that. Maybe having a plumber come out, send a camera through that drain from the house to the street. Just make sure that there's not a big break in there. If a sewer line has to be replaced, that can be a larger cost. You know, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000. Another thing, maybe HVAC systems, just being aware of the age of those. If there's certain red flags that say, hey, this needs to be looked at by an HVAC person, maybe there's a heat exchanger that's gone bad that they can find because it's, you know, it's old enough. Maybe it's showing some higher carbon monoxide levels. Typically, if an HVAC person comes in and they see that furnace needs a heat exchanger replaced, that they won't be able to repair it. They'll have to buy a new furnace. You know, so. And air conditioners, of course, we check those. You know, do a temperature drop on them. But you know, HVAC systems, they have a finite lifespan, so just being aware of that age. I mean, some of them will look pretty clean, and you know, but they'll be 20, 25 years old. So
yeah, there's always a lot of things, especially when you start getting older houses, that you need to be brought up to speed on. One of the big things you brought up, insurance, and something. You're going to be checking electrical to make sure everything comes up. Have you come across knob and tube?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And you may not know this, but knob and tube, what years were they installed?
So it was probably up to the 40s. Once you start getting into, after that, 50s, 60s. I think they might have still been doing a little bit in the 50s, but you get late 50s, 60s, you're switching over to a different kind. But I'm working on a house now that was built 1947 or something like that, and they still have knob and tube.
So that's
there.
something with that. Most insurance agents will not insure your property at all with knob and tube just because of the fire hazard associated with it. Most of the time, I had this situation come up. The knob and tube, unless you're grandfathered in, most are going to not insure you, or you're going to be paying a lot more until that gets fixed, and that is another huge expense, almost as much as a new roof on your house.
Yeah, it's a huge job having to rewire a whole house. Yeah, because a lot of times it'll be in the attic. It'll be in the exterior walls, interior walls, where to get to it, you basically have to take down, the walls. A lot of times it's plaster on an older house like that, which is it's not drywall.
No, that's a huge job.
Yeah.
With all of these, with the inspection that we're talking about right now, what generally are the costs that buyers are going to be seeing with it?
Yeah, typically around $400, $500. Depending on our company goes off of finished square footage of the house. So, for example, 1,600 and below right now, I think we're at like $395 or something.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Well, that's a pretty great price, especially when you're talking about $20,000 possible fixes. It's just investing in your house a little bit on the front end so that you don't run into those challenges later on. They do have a really cool program going on right now. For a lot of the real estate agents, a lot of buyers understand with the current market, sellers are looking for the home inspection to be waived. But they have come up with a cool idea to allow you to have at least a walkthrough with a professional home inspector to give the recommendations on different things that they're seeing, so that you can have better educated, so you can walk into the purchase with better understanding of what is going on with the property. Can you tell us a little bit about that program you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're calling it a pre-offer consultation. So this is something that is done during a showing, so with the real estate agent and the buyer. And kind of think of it as your uncle who knows a lot about houses come along with you on the showing, and so it's verbal only. We're not writing a report. This is not a home inspection. It's not as in depth, but we're still able to walk around the house and kind of pick out things that might be of more importance. Tell you, hey, this foundation wall looks like it might have some problems. We can give you the age of the HVAC. We can, we're not bringing tools in. We're not climbing around on the roof or climbing around in the attic. But we can, a lot of times you can kind of get a sense of the roof from the ground. Stuff like that. So we're bringing a flashlight. That's it. But we're offering this to buyers who feel like they're really interested in the house. Maybe they haven't looked at it yet. Maybe they've been doing a second showing, and they just want somebody with some home inspector knowledge to come along with them. And so that's what we're just in this market. And this is something that's we're not the only ones doing this. I kind of got this idea from, we have home inspector magazines. This is being done all over the country just because the market is so tight right now, basically everywhere. So it's something that we've talked to our insurance about. We have a new inspection agreement. Everything is we're trying to spell it out and make it as simple as possible. But just trying to provide that service to clients who otherwise wouldn't be able to get it, with the way this market is. So.
Yeah, so that's really going to be an advantage to you as the buyer, because a lot of times, if you can get that second home inspection or do that second walkthrough or something like that, yes, houses are going off the market very fast, but the average is still around 3 days. So if something comes up and you go and look at the house Friday night, well, we can schedule again Saturday afternoon. You're not limited to only seeing that house once. And say there is open house going on right at the house, then you checked it out Saturday. We can call up John or someone from his team and be like, hey, would you be available to come in here this afternoon before we write up and do a secondary walkthrough to make sure that what we're writing, you're comfortable with some of the things that might come up. rather than going in a little blind from just the walkthrough with your real estate agent or me. There's always going to be things that I know about and I know how to look at myself, but it pays to have an expert in the industry that's going to give you. That's why real estate agents go to them. That's why they are really a big role in the market here today. With that service, what does that generally cost?
So right now our fee is $200.
$200.
Yep. And it's that 30-minute walk and talk basically. If someone's going to look at houses after that, then we'll do down to $150.
Okay.
So.
Well, guys, thanks for joining us today. Hope you learned a few things about why it's important to get a home inspection when purchasing a house and different programs that you can take advantage of so that you can still walk into and purchase a house with some comfort. Hope to see you next time and have a great rest of your day.